we are the safety officers for the Citrus College Rocket Owls, and today we're going to be covering a safety briefing on how to utilize epoxy. The first thing we are going to cover is the proper PPE or personal protective equipment that you have to wear when operating this material, and then Daniel's going to go over the safety procedures while operating this material. First, you have to make sure that you're wearing your safety goggles, since this will make sure that nothing happens to your eyes. Secondly, you have to make sure that you're wearing your lab coat so no epoxy gets on your clothing. Third, you have to make sure that you're wearing latex gloves to make sure no epoxy gets in your hands. And lastly, you have to make sure you're wearing your respirator so no particulates get in your lungs while working with this material.
The first step in the safety procedures when working with epoxy is to ensure that you have a butcher paper with enough surface area to mix the epoxy and make any adjustments that you need. The next step is to mix the epoxy hardener and the epoxy resin in a 1-to-1 ratio. As you start mixing it and you notice it's a little runny, you can add more epoxy hardener to thicken it up. And then before you start epoxying the surfaces, ensure that you sand it with a 60 to 80 grit sandpaper to create a roughness and more surface area for the epoxy to bond to. And then before you dispose of any of the epoxy, it has to dry completely or else it's considered hazardous waste. That concludes our safety briefing. Stay tuned next week for the next one.